Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our second round of discussion. I'm thrilled to be joined by three esteemed professors of classics. Today we will explore the influence of ancient Greek on fields such as politics, economy, and technology, terms not only frequently used in Delphi, but also pivotal in our own lives. Interestingly, all these words are of Greek origin. Now, we will be discussing with Armand Angour, Professor of Classics at Oxford University. Welcome. Stephen Hunt, Professor of Classics at the Faculty of Education at Cambridge University. And Christian Laes, Professor of Ancient History at the University of Manchester. Thank you so much for being here, joining us in this wonderful panel of Ancient Greek. We're trying to make Ancient Greek much more modern in terms of the technology you saw before at the panel, and in the politics field and the economy field, it's very, very crucial that someone has at least a little bit of knowledge of ancient Greek. Why do you think that is the case?
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me. I think one of the most interesting things is what was mentioned by one of your earlier contributors, was the soft power of the classical world, and Greek in particular. And I just want to draw attention to a little scene I saw this morning when I was down on the ancient site in Delphi. And coming down the steps after a long, hard slog to the top of the hill was a family from, I think they were from France, with a small daughter and a small son, walking down the steps. And it's something I've done with my own family over the years as a classicist. I don't think they were classicists, but they still thought that coming to Delphi, coming to Greece, was part of an education that everybody should have. And I think sometimes we forget that the classical world, and the Greek classical world in particular, is something which is of a pan-European, a complete world experience. And that every child who gets that experience wants to come here and have it for themselves. And you know this because I put it on Facebook yesterday. When I was 8 years old, I saw a picture of the Tholos, the temple, the building next door to down the road, and it inspired me so much at the age of 8 that I always determined that I would come here. I didn't know what a classicist was. I didn't know what a classicist did, but somehow there was an inspirational factor about the ancient world which crosses every country and touches every person.
Thank you. Professor Dangour, why do you think it's so crucial for someone in the field of politics, economy, or technology, people that we see here all the time in Delphi during this forum, why do you think it's so important for them to have at least some knowledge of ancient Greek? I remember coming to Oxford a couple of years ago. I met many politicians, and everybody said, I'm so happy I came out of the classics department.
Yes.
So tell us why this is so important.
Well, I mean, in Oxford today, we have something like 500 students who are studying classical Greek. Well, classics generally, but at least 350 of them will actually be doing ancient Greek language. And of course, we know historically that a lot of our prime ministers, a lot of our leaders of industry, a lot of very important thinkers have gone to schools which taught them Latin and Greek at a young age, and they went on to study it at university, and very often had an extraordinarily deep knowledge of the literature, of the philosophy, and of course the language, which was taken for granted. I mean, when you think that in England, even when I was young, in the 60s, it was still possible to start Latin, as I did at the age of 6, and Greek at the age of 8. And
Greek at the age of 8. Please note this down.
And so important to start it early, because by the age of, say, 13 or 14, my knowledge of reading Greek was, I'm afraid to say, greater than a lot of my finalist undergraduates today. So it is very important to start it early, because you get it into your brain, you learn to love all sorts of aspects of it. Of course, a lot of the students today talk about mythology as the basis of their love of ancient thinking, ancient Greek thinking. Of course, it's all ancient Greek.
And many words come from ancient Greek.
I mean, of course.
Time.
I mean, we talk about the love of etymologies from Latin, but of course, in English, you show students a few words where there's an etymological link, and they're completely transfixed. So I remember even at school, I was asked to give a little demonstration about word roots. And I was fascinated by the fact that words like wine, for example, go right back, of course, to oinos with the digamma, the wow at the beginning, so oinos as it was. And even then I thought to myself, well, what about words like oikos? Oikos, of course, oikos in ancient Greek was home. It then becomes vicus in Latin, means a village, a little place where you live. And it then transfers into modern English as wick. So we talk about Eton Wick, it's a place, or Chiswick. And so you think, well, actually our language is full of Greek roots, not just Latin roots. I mean, these are incidental aspects, because I think the wonder of Greek culture is the incredible literature, the fantastic philosophy, all the amazing theatre and drama and mathematics and everything.
And always relevant and timeless.
Totally relevant. And you mentioned techne, of course, as an ancient Greek word. My first area of research, and I've done various things in ancient music, and I've written recently about Socrates, but my first area of research was on ancient innovation. And it sounds a little bit like a contradiction in terms, but I came from, I'd read Greek and Latin at school and university, but I then went into business. I became a musician for a while, then became a businessman. And when I came back to do my PhD, I wanted to find an area which covered a whole range of reading of ancient Greek texts. And so I chose a term, kenotomia.
There you
and
go.
I thought, let us look at to kenon, the new, in Greek. And amazingly, nobody had done this. They'd all looked at, the Greeks looked back. They said the ancient Greeks, they thought they were in the grip of the past. It's actually the name of the title of a book written in 1953 by von Groningen. In the grip of the past. So I said, how is it possible that a people in the grip of the past, in 400 years roughly, from 800 to 400 BC, invented philosophy, invented theatre, invented new kinds of sculpture, invented medicine, invented democracy? What is in the grip of the past? They never thought, you know what, let's look forward. Of course they did. And so my first book, 2011, is called The Greeks and the New, Novelty in Ancient Greek, Imagination and Experience, because it's both. They had the imagination to think of new things, and they had the experience of novelty. And like us, they found it frightening and exciting. Not one or the other, both. And there was enough evidence in the text that I looked at to show that the ancient Greeks looked forward. They understood the concept of progress. They actually came up with it, probably. And this is something that we all need to be thinking about.
Thank you very much. Professor Laes, tell us your insights on how you think that economy, politics, and technology, all three Greek words, shape people's minds, people's mindsets today and for the future.
Yeah. What I'd like to stress, first of all, that is when people doing economics, politics, or whatever, and when they learn, when they study ancient Greek, why would they really do so? That's, of course, a fundamental question. I always tell people that it's pretty much about what we call transferable skills. So this means that it doesn't come automatically. It's not like when you study ancient Greek that you would become a successful businessman or politician whatsoever. It's not something that can be learned by studying Greek exclusively. Let that be clear too. So you could, of course, study other subjects. But the great thing about studying ancient Greek is that it does not only teach you all these fantastic intellectual skills. So it sort of teaches you how to come to terms with a difficult, challenging language, but much more, it will also tell you something and teach you something about empathy, about how to get access to a culture which is in some ways strange to us, because it's of course a culture of a long time ago, but at the same time we feel this sort of similarity, we feel this continuity too. And I think this constant interplay between continuity and change is one of these fascinating things of studying ancient Greek civilization. And the sort of empathy, the sort of feeling you get for these other texts is a skill you can basically use in every single aspect of life, and of course in politics, in business and whatsoever. So I think it's much more about meaning than about being useful. So of course there's usefulness there, but I very much prefer the meaning. It makes sense, really, to study this culture.
Thank you, thank you. There is always the myth that whoever wants to go into classics will be out of a job. They won't be able to find a job. And so this is the case in Greece, at least. They say, you know, you want to become a philologist, you'll never get to work, you'll never get to make enough money to survive. So people in Greece turn their kids away from studying classics because of that. Do you see that this is the case also in the UK?
Statistically, it is not the case at all. So everyone who reads classics in Oxford pretty well gets a job. I mean, these are people who employers want. And what is wonderful and rather sad in some ways for people who do things like law at university is they find that the best lawyers are not the ones who have read law at university, but the ones who've read classics, Greek and Latin, and then they do a one-year conversion course. And currently, I mean, I'm on a charitable a charity which tries to get Latin and Greek into schools.
Which one is that?
It's called Classics for All.
Oh, how nice.
Yes, it's wonderful. We managed to get Latin to 70,000 students over the last 8 years, and we're going to try and get, and we started with classical Greek as well. So what we do is we train the teachers to teach the kids. I mean, congratulations to you for doing what you do, because I think it's wonderful to start young and to see your young people performing at the beginning of this show as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you for mentioning
that.
But
What we have done is also some statistical work, and it shows that those students who choose to do these languages at school excel in the other areas. They go on and they do physics A-level, or they do maths A-level, and it doesn't matter what they do, they are better for having done language learning.
Classical languages are the foundation of everything that follows,
but
right?
also they're difficult, they're challenging, and they're fun. And the thing is, if you enjoy what you do for 3 years at university, then you're going to go on. First of all, you're going to work harder at it, which is what our classicists all do. I can tell you, they have to work very hard. There's a lot of reading, a lot of thinking. But if you are motivated to do what you're studying, really motivated because you're fascinated by it, you'll just do much more work. And you'll be much better at it. And so then you go on and do a one-year conversion course and you become a lawyer. So in the Classics for All group, we have a lawyers group, people who read classics at school and university. There are at least 100 lawyers, top lawyers from the Master of the Rolls, the Lord Chief Justice down, who are members of that group.
Beautiful. Professor Hunt, talk to us about a little bit the role of Classics for All, about your experience teaching Latin and some ancient Greek to kids of young age, elementary school students. And then tell us a little bit about the communicative approach.
Yes, okay. So, I mean, Armand has talked about Classics for All, and I also do some work for Classics for All as well, which is a charity in the UK designed to assist teachers to start classics, Latin and Greek, non-linguistic courses like ancient history.
And when did this start?
This has been going for just about 10 years now. We celebrated the 10th anniversary last year. And the thing about it is that a lot of teachers, a lot of head teachers want to have classics in their school. They find difficulty finding space on the timetable because the timetable is crowded. They find difficulty in finding staff for the minuscule amount of time that is required on the timetable. So what we do is we train teachers who are already teachers in those schools, may have a bit of Latin, may have a bit of Greek already, or we train them up and give them courses to make sure they can do it. And it has been, as Armand said, very, very successful over the last 10 years and continues to be successful. In fact, I'm going to a meeting about it on Tuesday, in which we're going to pool all our resources and get our ideas together. One of the things that's really interesting at the moment in the UK is about how we teach ancient Greek and how we teach Latin. And one of your colleagues earlier on today talked about how we can, in a sense, put students off learning about the ancient world, partly because we insist on language, and I think we should insist on language, but partly because the way that is taught can be very off-putting. And there's been a lot of experimentation in America, where they are less restricted by examinations and external forces. A little bit of experimentation in the UK. And Eleni Agogi, for example, is probably the prime example in Greece of methodology which we might describe as active teaching of the classical languages, which is less focused on drilling in grammar knowledge and is more about experiential learning of a language through using the language. At a very simple level, first of all, increasing in complexity, and obviously when a student wishes to go to Oxford and Cambridge and Manchester, they'll have reached a different standard because they'll be reading literature as well. But in the initial stages, it's about providing an experience which is not threatening, which is not top-heavy in grammar terminology, and is about enjoying using and appreciating language. I learnt ancient Greek slightly later than this gentleman here. I started ancient Greek at the age of 14. Most people in the UK start it at 14, but not very many of them. And I'm sure that if we were able in Classics for All to devise some materials which were more active, we would get even more people through Classics for All giving it a try. And I always take the view that even if they don't take it to examination level or they don't do it at university level, they will have had a positive experience. And as language said earlier on today, the whole point about language learning, or learning of any sort, is it doesn't have to stop at school. It can be taken up at any other point in one's life, in one's career. And I think we need to sow those seeds of enjoyment of learning languages, even something as relatively complicated as ancient Greek, so that they can pick it up later on.
Thank you very much. Professor Laes, apart from being a history professor in Manchester, you're also the president of Euroclassica, and you have experienced people enjoying by learning ancient Greek and Latin and doing amazing things. Tell us a little bit about your experience being the president of Euroclassica on the field of classics worldwide. What do you see happening the last years?
Well, I'm particularly happy to see that joy that people really enjoying studying both Latin and ancient Greek in a living way, to say so, from, if we just go for Europe, from Ireland and the UK up to Georgia, which was the last country to join Euroclassica 1 year ago now. So this is a thing, if we discuss technology also, it's a thing we should be really aware of. Let's say before 10 years, how would it have been possible to hear someone speaking, saying words in ancient Greek? Hardly impossible. You needed to go like to a special summer school. There were some initiatives. Okay. Now, and of course, thanks to Eleni Agogi too, it's all over the place.
It's all over the place.
You can
amazing.
watch movies on YouTube. You can listen to songs. Everything is basically there. So indeed, it doesn't need to stop at school. So, of course, you could encourage and motivate your students just to listen to things, to read, for instance, which exists now also, news in ancient Greek, just for fun, at home. So there are incredible possibilities which weren't there like 10 years ago, and we should take all these possibilities, grasp all these opportunities really to further motivate our students, and I'm happy to see this really happening all over Europe. So I got invited to many places already, and often people will show what they are also doing with that living approach, which, in my opinion, can be summarized in just one sentence, it sort of shows us that, you can say this about Latin or ancient Greek, that ancient Greek is a language, not a puzzle. There's a famous article about this. Because how long have we been used to study these languages almost as medical doctors perform an autopsy?
Yes.
Yeah, an autopsy, something like this. And now, you just by saying some words in ancient Greek, the Greek is already in your mouth. And through your mouth, Quintilian, as a great pedagogical thinker, already realized this, through your mouth, it's also in your ears, it's sticking in your memory too. So it helps. Yeah? And I always believe that speaking ancient Greek or Latin should not be our main purpose. But it's an incredible help.
Yes, it's a tool.
It's a tool. It's a tool to acquire this language in order for us to be able to read these fantastic texts.
Of course, it's a tool. We need all 4 skills to learn a language, any language.
Yes.
We need to read, we need to write, we need to talk, and we need to listen in order to acquire all the basic skills in order to learn a language. Even when you start learning any foreign language, the teacher goes in the classroom and says hello. When you learn English or kalimera says χαίρετε, you don't just speak the language of the class. You introduce the language by speaking it. And I remember a few years ago when I started doing some videos speaking in ancient Greek, people in Greece would like, what is she doing? And now there are people trying to imitate what they ridiculed a few years ago. And to me, this is amazing. It was an apocalypse when I went abroad and I saw all you people teaching ancient Greek in a communicative way, and it's much easier for the Greeks to learn ancient Greek this way than it is for non-Greeks. This is why I'm so passionate in all of these efforts to try and promote the ancient Greek language more to the Greeks by bringing it from abroad. Now, Professor Yuval Harari, the famous historian, said once that if you have a child at the age of 16, 17 that is not really sure what they're going to do with their lives, let them study philosophy. Let them study classics, because this is a safe bet. Even now, when all the risks in technology and AI and all the dilemmas are coming up, it's a much more safe base.
Well, this is something
Tell us about
Mr. Duca said earlier, and I thought, I remember when I went to school in 1970, they had a new machine. It was called the computer room, and a big machine.
Scary.
Probably about 10 bytes or kilobytes, but with ticker tape and everything. And I spent hours learning a language called Fortran. And Fortran was one of the early languages for computers. And within about 10 years, it's just effectively completely useless. At that same school, I was learning Latin and Greek. I have continued to learn Latin and Greek, but Fortran, forget it.
Yes.
So I agree. Those things are changing very fast. What is beautiful about the knowledge of the ancient languages is that they remain
the solid foundation that they offer. Professor Hunt.
My feeling is that, when we study classics, when we study Greek, ancient Greek at higher levels, we're not just studying the language, and we are studying the people, the material culture, the literature, the whole sense of what it is to be an ancient Greek. And I think that, coming to your idea about what is in that for a person who is going to go into a job somewhere, what skills is somebody actually learning from that process? They're learning. We talked about empathy, the ability to put yourself in the shoes of somebody else who is not the same as you. What better skill can that be for the world of business when you're constantly on the telephone, on an email, in a meeting like this, a meeting with people that you have never met before? It's prepared you for those sorts of experiences, to think like another person or to experience how another person might behave. The language itself, I think we all agree, we can make it very simple in the early stages. if we want to read original literature, it's not an easy language. We can't pretend it's not an easy language. But the mental skill and persistence that we require to understand, whether we choose to translate, we might just choose to read, we might just choose to skim read it, whatever we're doing, a mental skill develops in recalling information and applying it to new situations. That's a really important skill to have for any person in the world of work today. The persistence and accuracy and dedication. You talked about the flow. We have the theory of flow, but I'm afraid to say I can never remember the name. That's the man, yes. And the theory of flow is when you get so involved in something that you cannot think of doing anything else. Mm-hmm. And classics is one of those things which sucks you in. It can, like us gentlemen, ladies here, become the be-all and end-all of our lives, and we're very lucky in that way. But for those of us who the flow stops at some point, we've been prepared to go out into the big wide world with a lot of very, very powerful and important skills. I'm not saying you don't get those skills in any other subject either, but I think it's the combination of language and literature and humanity that we get in the study of the ancient world that makes us different.
Mm-hmm. Professor Laes, your insights on the field of technology compared to the learning of classics in ancient Greek in particular?
I would just like to add that the whole discussion about why study classics and should we not better study technology, that this is a discussion, this might be a comforting thought for all of us, that already started at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Mm-hmm. Already then you find thinkers saying, well, let's just get rid of that Latin and ancient Greek. We don't need this anymore. What we need to study is technology. But then, as Armand said already, there's so many technological innovations which after 10 years are of no use anymore. Classics are still there, because it's a sort of discipline that assures us that we can keep some distance. So we can study things from a certain distance, with a sort of tranquility of mind also, because we know that so many things have been there already before, and that so many of these things have been studied already, or have been said by these ancient thinkers. And a quote that I like very much in this respect is the following one. In a way, classics are always dying. That's a discussion of 2 centuries already. Classics are dying, but they never die.
They don't, and they never
They're still here, aren't they? So, yeah.
So classics are immortal.
I guess so.
Or timeless,
so.
maybe.
Yes, timeless.
Okay, we're reaching towards the end of this discussion, but please tell us a few things in regards to this originality of Language Cert issuing the first language certificate, classical Greek certificate, and how does this provide an incentive for the students to be assessed in a way that they get a global certification of the knowledge of classical Greek? How would you, what would you say about this?
Well, I think one of the things that most countries have their own examination system and their own certification. There are some transnational examinations, but very few of them have what one might describe as tiered layers or layers of examination. We tend to examine students on one examination to which everybody is one set target against which everyone is measured. And what Language Cert seems to do with having different layers is it shows that a student can progress to a point that they are comfortable with and receive certification for. And then if they want to, they can move to a further layer, and then to a further layer. So what it does is, and we found this with in the UK with some self-created, not by myself, but some self-created qualifications in ancient Greek, in fact, which a student who perhaps thinks this qualification up here is impossible to get is prepared to work to this one, gets that one, and then thinks, well, actually, I will give it a try and keep further, because qualifications are seen as incentivizing work, not just as summarizing achievement. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Language Cert is trying to do, to incentivize students to do the best they can in the circumstances they can, and that then persuades them to continue to the next layer. That's, I think, the defining feature of it.
Professor Tangour?
Well, just as
Just
we
a
have
few words.
seconds left, just to say I hope that People Search and your efforts and everyone else's will encourage particularly the Greeks to embrace again this language, which is your language, which is the basis of so many languages and so much thinking, and to understand that it is both beautiful in your lives and very useful.
Thank you. Professor Laes,
Yes,
few
I'd like to
words?
summarize it just in a few words. It's all really about the incentive. Why? Because you can't compare any country with another, so they all have like different study programs, also for Greek, of course. But what a great idea if you just offer these exams. There's nothing, of course, you don't impose it. You just offer it, and it's all about this motivation. And then you will see children again from, let's say, France and Bulgaria, sort of taking the same exam and just being proud of the result they've achieved. And then perhaps the teachers organizing like small ceremony, something with photos on the internet. And it's basically a thing we try to do also with the EJEX and ELEX exams from Euroclassica. And I always tell people, well, if you just realize that thousands of students all over Europe are doing this, well, that's why we do it, really. So it's not about imposing something, but it's just about offering this extra motivation, incentive.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here with us today. Thank you so much for being with us. Please stay, hold on, because we have our third panel of discussions. Let's put classics in praxis, with teachers showing us with teachers showing us how they teach by speaking ancient Greek.